Everybody, it's Eva from Erin Lewber Coaching, and I'm taking over today's podcast episode. So let's get into it. Today's guest has lived and worked in 5 different cities, from Boston to Newark to Austin to Chicago, and now Charlotte. She played college soccer, and these days she spends her summers in a lake house in the Poconos, where she's actually joining us from today. She thinks she's in charge, but her 2 dogs actually are. She's a reader, a paddleboarder, and she has very specific opinions about where you should be eating dinner tonight. On the career side of things, she spent 12 years in special education across 3 different states. Then she jumped into sales at a beloved EdTech company where we actually met. And now she's a senior account manager running some of the largest school networks in the country at another beloved education company. Everybody say hello to my friend, Nicolina.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to get into it. So Nicolina and I first met when I got my first job outside of the education space, which I think was it also yours, Nicolina?
It was, yeah. I think we started right around the same time there. And so our path has been pretty similar, I would say.
Yeah, I think we started within a couple of weeks of each other. So starting off there, talk to me a little bit about your career as a special education teacher, moving into admin, and now being in the ed tech sales side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I went to college and graduate school, got a master's degree in special education. I always knew I wanted to do that. And so I went to school up in the Boston area, and after I graduated from grad school, I stayed up there and started teaching some smaller charter schools, and stayed there for a few years. I was mostly in the elementary realm, second, third, fourth grade, special education. Absolutely loved it. Just adored my students, adored the colleagues that I worked with. Um, and then I ended up leaving Massachusetts, moving back to New Jersey, where I'm originally from, and started working for a super high performing charter school network in New Jersey, where I was also a special education teacher for a few years and then actually made the jump into administration. So I was an assistant principal special education over K-8 for a couple of years there. So I was sort of running all the sides of special education, from push-in services to pull-out services.
Oh my
We opened
gosh.
some, yeah. We also opened some specialized classrooms, some behavior classrooms, some autism classrooms, which was really a highlight for sure, because it was the first time we'd ever done that in the network. And then I ended up actually moving to Texas. So I moved to Texas in 2019 to actually be closer to my sister who lived down in Austin. So I stayed with the same charter network down there as well for a couple of years and was the assistant principal of special education as well. Taught through the pandemic, and down in Texas, we did open schools that fall of 2020. So I was like back in the building right in 2020. And then it was actually later that year in 2021, at the end of the school year, that, I had been toying with this idea of, what's my next step, right? I wanted to stay in education, but I wanted to try to scale it to a larger place where I could influence on a larger scale. I wanted to really still stay in an area and an industry that I was very passionate about. So that's when I ended up looking for an ed tech position. And that was when, through just some hard work and interviewing and, just reaching out using my network of people that I knew, I was able to land a job in sales at the company that you and I worked for. And that was in 2021. So here I am about 5 years later.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a crazy journey, but it's been great.
Yeah, it's where it started for the both of us, right? And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that our experience and so many other people's experience really shows how there are educational technology companies that really vary experiences as teachers, principals, administrators. It's just a matter of honestly finding them. But in my experience, a lot of them really do value that, especially coming into sales roles.
Agreed.
Okay, but I want to really get into that sales roles. But first,
Yeah.
what I want to know from you is, was there a defining moment that you were like, okay, I'm done with education? Or
Mm,
was it sort of something that you kind of were just thinking about for a little bit?
sure. I never got to a point where I was like, I'm done. I want to get out of this. And this is what I've told a few other people that I've talked to. If you're thinking about it, start the process sooner. Because
Mm-hmm.
the last place you want to get to is you get to a point where you're so done that you take any job that lands at you, and that is not where you should go. So my experience was I knew that I was getting to a point where I was ready to take the next step. And so I wanted to I started looking, I landed the job in June. I would say I started looking in January, February about like starting to like see what else was out there outside of the school building. And I feel grateful that I left and don't have regrets about leaving. I never felt burnout. I never felt like I got to get out of here. I still have like great feelings towards teaching and being an educator. And I never wanted to get to the place where
Mhm.
I was so burnt out from it. So I, I feel strongly about that because, I didn't want to just take the first job that landed there because I wanted to find something to work for a company I was passionate about. I wanted to work for a company where I felt like I could make an impact still. So there wasn't really a defining moment, I would say. It was just it was an idea in my head and I just kind of ran with it.
Yeah, I think very similar to you. I've sort of started feeling that itch, and I didn't want to get to the point where I was feeling resentful or I was starting to feel burnt out. And I think, unfortunately,
Exactly.
so many people do get to that point because teaching is almost seen as a calling, right? Like, this is what you're
Mm,
meant to do. How can you leave? Think about the
hmm
kids. And then you start feeling guilty, and you're like, okay, yeah, all these kids who realistically, they're going to be fine. Like, they
That
will
was a hard one
be
too.
fine.
Yeah, and like I feel
Yeah.
like educators, it's like the teacher guilt, that I don't know where it
Hmm.
comes from. Like I think it's because we're so passionate about the work. But at the same time, like don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, was I frustrated? Was I close to wanting to just like give it all up? Sure. I mean, that's we all have
Hmm.
that. But I think like having the opportunity to just kind of like recognize, okay, I am starting to feel like this, so like what can I do about it? And taking the initiative a little bit to start to look outside. And I think if you're thinking about it, just start to do the work. Like start to look
Yeah.
outside of the school building and see what opportunities are out there because like you said, you don't want to get to the point where you walk away and then you resent the work, of being an
Hmm.
educator. But yeah, that teacher guilt is really a thing. And I mean, what we've been out of the classroom for 5, 6 years, like even in those 5 years since you and I have been we're teaching, like education
Yeah.
has changed incredibly.
So
And it always
much.
does, right? It's a pendulum. It swings kind of constantly, but
Hmm.
we feel for you, the educators out there. We do. We know it's really hard. It's harder. It was
Yeah.
always hard, but I know that even now with just all the things
It's a
going on,
different
we know
hard.
that it's hard. It sure is. It surely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned something about when you're starting to feel it, just start looking and start really putting some time and work into it. And I think that's important because I think so many people, they wait and they're like, oh, I'll start looking in like April or May so I can get a job over the summer. And the reality of the situation is you have no control over this timeline. As much as that's hard to hear, that's the reality of it, right? I have people that I work with that they can land jobs in 3 months. Some of them take 9 months. It took me an entire school year. It took you about
Mm,
6 months,
it
right?
sure did.
So
Hmm
I think that's a hard thing to grasp as well, that these outside of education, there's a completely different timeline, a completely different calendar, right? The year doesn't end in June. And I still like find myself on that like September to June cycle because I
Yeah.
taught in New York. So we go back after Labor Day, we go until the end of June. So I still find myself kind of on that mindset, that way of thinking about the year. But that's often a really hard conversation with people of like, if you start looking, you have to be ready to go if somebody offers you something because it's not going to still be available tomorrow. So I'm wondering how you navigated that. Like, were you worried about the timeline ever? Because I know we kind of got, I guess, lucky and it was a coincidence that it worked out that we started at the end of June. But how was that for you?
I think it's important what you just said about the timeline because ed tech companies, most any tech company at that point, they're looking at restructuring and hiring in like October, November, right? Like that's when they're looking at for the next year because we work on fiscal years. We work January to December. So
Hmm.
it's important that like they're looking and restructuring their teams. They're posting new jobs in November, December because they want to be fully hired by January. So if you're waiting until June, I mean, the chances of there being a job open are slimmer. So it's like understanding the timeline of, and it's a shift in your mind when you're an editor and you're like, oh, I'll do it in June because that's when everybody's out. That's a shift. You have to remember, like, that's not how a fiscal year works in, like in the tech industry. So I would say, back to your question, I I did end up getting my job in June, but I did have to leave the school a couple weeks early, which wasn't ideal. But at the same time, I had that sort of feeling of, you know what, these schools, they continue to go on. They do.
Yeah.
As much as it's a
Yeah.
loss, and you should, as an educator, like know that yes, you are. It is a loss for a school to lose you, especially if you're good and you're passionate and you love what you do. It's a loss, but the school will go on. And I think that's a really hard truth to like
Hmm.
handle, is that
Yeah,
the
it
school
is.
will go on. But it's one of those like that oxygen mask thing. Like you have to put yours on first before you help someone else
Hmm.
because like
Yeah.
how can you, and this was something that it was a big like epiphany realization of how can I be good to my, at that point I was an admin. How can I be the best version of myself to the teachers I was coaching, the parents I
Hmm.
was sitting in on IEP meetings with, the students, if I'm not the best version of myself to me first.
Yeah.
Right. And like
That's
and that's so hard. So therefore, like looking when I was able to get that realization, I was able to understand that like the school is going to continue to go on
mhm.
and I am going to be in a better place for me and like my own life and by taking a job that is hitting more of what I want to do long term.
Did you, speaking of what you wanted to do long term, did you always want to be in sales? Like, did you start this journey thinking, I do want to pivot into a sales role, or where were you with that?
Sure, yeah. In all honesty, I wasn't looking at sales at first because I didn't think that I had the skills to do it. I was like, I'm an educator.
Same.
What do I know? What do I know about sales? Right. I wouldn't even
Yeah.
say I started looking at that. And it wasn't until I started really like connecting with my network of people that they were like, you should look at sales jobs because
Hmm.
of particularly like you speak the same language as the people you're selling to, right? Like you've sat in their shoes. You've been a teacher, you've been an admin, you've sat in sales meetings with other vendors and listened to their pitch. So you know what it is that you're doing. So I say that because don't count it out. And I've said that to a number of people that I've talked to, like don't count out sales
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
there's so much there that like is transferable that you could be really, really good at it. And so for me, I didn't. And then once I like learned a little bit more about it, I realized, oh, this is something I could really do.
Yeah. A similar story to you. I was really scared about it at first because I had this weird connotation about it, or this weird perception of it,
Hmm.
negative perception from stereotypes, or however it came in. Similar to you, like I had conversations and people were like, you should really consider sales roles. And now look at the both of us in sales roles.
Yeah.
But you said there's a lot of transferable skills, and there absolutely are so many. And a lot of the teachers that I work with, they don't think of it that way until I point it out to them. And I say, you just told me that you did X, Y, and Z. Do you realize that that is applicable when you're in an account executive or an account manager role? And you see that light bulb and they're like, I've only been thinking about it in like the teacher or principal framing, but it's about thinking a little bit bigger. So we, as educators, we have had a lot of those experiences and those skills that can transfer over. But I don't know about you, but when I first moved into a sales role, there was something really, really scary for me. And that was learning CRM, which is a
Oh.
customer
Mhm.
relationship management system, which is where, as folks on the sales team, we keep track of everything. It's like your grade book, if you will, right? You're keeping track of the people that you talk to, your open opportunities, the sales, those notes, everything is in there. And I remember being really nervous about a CRM because it was so unfamiliar to me. And that also tied with having a quota and having to hit a quota. And that was another thing that was scary to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to hit a quota. And then one of our former coworkers said to me, it's not much different than your students having to get a specific score on their state exams, right? You're always tracking that. So that framing helped as well. So all that to say, what was scary for you? Like what was your like CRM and quota
Yeah.
fear?
Yeah, totally. Um, I am the hardest on myself. And so I wanted to like, I essentially like switched careers in my mid 30s. Right. And like that was very scary because I didn't want to fail at something. I didn't want to move into something and not be good at it. Right. And especially because when I got hired, they were taking a chance on hiring someone who had no sales experience. And while I recognize that that was a, that was a choice. It was also the way I came across, right? It was also my ability to like articulate the skills that I have. It was my ability to say, okay, I understand that there is, there's a quota and there's commission and there's a pipeline and like all these things that I hadn't heard before, which all of it
Hmm.
was scary. But I think the scariest thing being like, am I going to be good at this? And so something that the person that hired me said, I can teach you sales, but I cannot teach you the 12 years of experience that you have that you bring to this role. And like that was such a light bulb moment that I think anyone should who's thinking about moving into sales should understand because sales, it's a process, but it is something you can learn, right? Like
Oh,
it
for
is
sure.
something you can like take courses on it, you can do webinars, you can like really understand it. And it is, there are things that you have to like fully like dive into and it takes a little while. But I think, that was the scariest part is just like, what if I'm not good at this and I like fail at something? And I think that's just me being hard on myself, which is, I think, some that like came from working in these like high performing charter school networks where like you had to
Hmm.
beat numbers, and I think something else that you just said made me think this too. The CRM, the pipeline, the quotas, like all of those things. If you think about it, how many times did your district like switch curriculums on you? Like I felt
Oh
like it almost
gosh.
every year, right? How many
Hmm.
times do you have to like learn a new supplemental program and how to make it work in your classroom? Sometimes I would get like two or three of them in the same year. So if you think
Hmm.
about that, like those are all things like as an educator, like you handle that. You probably do that and don't even realize that you're handling that. You assess your kids, you learn a new
Yeah.
curriculum, you teach things a different way, you differentiate. Those are all things that are like transferable to the type of ethic that you need to be in sales. It's the long-term planning, it's short-term planning, it's backwards planning. We do all of that. I do that all the time. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I create a long-term plan every year and then I look at it quarterly and be like, okay, what did I do well at? What did I not? And how can I, make it better?
Yeah. Backwards planning. We do it as teachers. We do it now as people in sales roles, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
same but different. And you said something about how like we've implemented new curriculums and things have changed and we've created all these plans. And that's what I come across a lot when I'm talking to people. I'll ask them to tell me specific details about something that they told me they've done. And they're like, why are you asking me all this? And I'm like, because that differentiates you, right? That tells me what you did and the impact that you had as an educator. And there's been times when people have said, I almost didn't tell you about that because I didn't think it was a big deal. But now when I'm going on these interviews, I'm always asked about it. And that's
Mm,
become my like anchor story. And sometimes it's just a matter of talking to somebody and having them look at what you've done and understand what you've done to then shift that framing and for you to understand, oh, wait, this is how other people see it. And I think it's important when you're going through that process to bounce things off of people that
mm,
have been where you are and that are where you're trying to go. And I think a lot of people, a lot of educators are nervous to get into sales roles because of these misconceptions that we have. And I know that you get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, right? From people asking you, how did you get into EdTech? How did you get into your certain role? And you say, you have like a canned answer almost, right? Because it's so much to put in a DM, which by the way, I recorded a whole episode about this if anybody's interested in how I got out of the classroom. But want to hear from you, Nicolina. What do you
yeah,
usually share with people when they reach
sure.
out to you on LinkedIn? Because there's
Yeah,
so much to share, but what do you like
absolutely.
to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I have like a couple key points that I make a note on. The first one is just what we talked about. Like understand and like make a list and write down what are the skills that you have that are transferable to these roles. Flexibility, leadership, the fact that you like can wear a few different hats, right? Like what are those things that you've done? Did you create a curriculum? Did you implement a curriculum? Did you you know, what are the things that you did creatively as well inside your classroom or inside the school building? Like definitely making a list of what those are. I also share that it's a long process and don't get bogged down by the process. You're going to apply for a lot of jobs, you're going to interview for a lot of jobs. You may never hear back from some jobs. Lean on your network. We all have it. Lean on your network. And make sure that you're just like reaching out to as many people as you can. Hey, if you hear about this, can you put my name down as a referral? What do you think about
Hmm.
this job? Like lean on your network, but don't get discouraged by the process. And then the other thing that I think is like so top tier that feels like easy to overlook is be sure that you're doing your research on the companies and the products that you're interviewing for. Find things that you can align with. Find companies whose mission and vision you align with. If it's a product, make sure it's something you can stand behind, that you agree with what they're doing. Because I think like this will now become your job and this will now become your career and to leave a position that you were passionate about, you want to be able to still put that passion somewhere, put it in, make sure it's with a company that you align with, that you agree with, that you can stand behind. You have to represent this company, especially as a salesperson. Like you have to represent the company in a meeting,
Yeah.
in a conference, wherever you are. And I think that is something that, something earlier we talked about, like, don't get to a point where you're so desperate that you will just work
Hmm.
for anyone, because I can promise you that is not going to work out.
Yeah. It's often going to be worse than where you're at right now, I think.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you're talking about getting behind the product or the company, and the platform. And I can't emphasize that enough. When I was looking, I wasn't going to look at roles at tech companies that my district used that I groaned about using, right? Like if it was like a certain company that I had to use with my middle schoolers, that every time I was like, I'm not going to look there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you've actually used in your classroom, but it has to be something that you can familiarize yourself with if it's not something you've used, and that you can see the value behind and you can understand why it's necessary or why it's beneficial and how it's going to help educators.
Couldn't
Um,
agree more. I think that's a number of conversations that you and I maybe have with, customers right now, being able to
mhm.
say, this is how I would have used it in my classroom. This
Yes.
is,
Yes. Oh my
this
gosh.
is, if it is like the company I work for now, I actually did use this product. So I can actually have the historical knowledge of the product and say, when I was teaching, this is how I used it. When I was an admin, this is how
Hmm.
I would share with my teachers to use it. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you did use, but it just like,
Yeah.
can you stand behind it and say, this is how I would have used it once you get the full product knowledge? I mean, that is just like chef's kiss. The best thing you can do in a sales conversation is be able to share that with a customer.
Yeah, for sure. It's important to bring in your perspective as a former educator because that helps to build a relationship. And also, if you really care about it, which you should, if that's what you're doing, you want
Exactly.
that to come across as well, right? And you want to be able to
100%.
say to them, this is how I did use it, or this is how I would use it. I taught seventh grade, I taught ninth grade, I was a principal of special ed, or whatever it is. You want to make sure that that you're a partner, right? And that you're helping them solve whatever challenge it is. And that's what it really comes down to. It comes down to helping people solve a problem. That is what the majority of the sales role is. So for you specifically, Nicolina, you started off in a more traditional account executive type role, and now you've moved into a more traditional account manager type role. Those are most of the time two different roles. Some companies have interchangeable names, but most of the time, those are two different roles, and they are just two types of roles that are in the world of sales. So I want to hear from you. What's it like having gone from being an account executive to, or I know we call them account directors right over there, but from an account executive type role into an account manager role?
I'm grateful that I had the experience of both. Traditionally, what I've seen is that an account executive, which is what I did first when I first got out of teaching, is what we consider new business. So you're going after customers who don't currently use the product that you're selling. Um, that is, it's a wonderful role. I would argue it's a very creative role because you have to like continuously find new ways to get in front of your customers.
For
And I think
sure.
that is something that like, if that is your jam and like you love that sort of idea of like not doing the same thing every day and like coming up with new ideas and finding ways to connect with people, I mean, it's such a great way to like really understand the sales process. What I'm doing
Hmm.
now is a little bit different. It's more relationship management as an account manager. So I came into a book of business and I have to manage these. They're all, I work only right now with the charter school networks nationally. So some strategic like accounts. But what I love about that too is they're already sold on the product. What it is
Hmm.
now is keeping them not happy, but like keeping them satisfied the product with your relationship with them, and making sure you're just being proactive and then doing everything you can to make sure that they continue to renew and work with you. And I mean, both have their strengths. Both are hard. I mean, I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat that. The work is hard. I mean, at the end of the day, but it's fulfilling. As a personally, I really love the relationship management. I love kind of like building these partnerships with these networks and like being a thought partner with. Can we elevate, what we're doing with you? Here's some new strategic ideas. Here's some professional learning ideas. I'll come down and we'll do a data consult together, right? So I like that
Yeah.
idea. But at the same time, the trend I'm seeing is in sales, in EdTech, is that these roles are starting to kind of mush together a little bit. So I also still have a new business quota that I have to meet.
Hmm.
It's obviously smaller than my renewal business, but still have to do that nature. Like, how can I get in front of, some of these people? How can I expand the services, expand the product? So I think I'm starting to think both kind of showing up in some of these roles, which I think is cool. It's definitely it's not the same work every day. And I think
Yeah,
that is something that, as an educator, that's what we did. It was never the same thing every day. Certainly not in this day and age can you just like rinse and repeat, right? So I think
for
that's
sure.
right. That's also something I really appreciate about the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah, and I think it's different based on the school building or the district or the network that you're working with, right? You might have one group that's really focused on building literacy skills, for example, which we all are, but they might have a heavier focus on that. And then another group that really wants to focus on career exploration or math or another area. So that's where that creativity comes in. And it's like, okay, I have to figure out the best way to support them. And for you specifically, having been in a charter school network as an educator and as an administrator, I think really proves what you were saying earlier, where you literally sat in these people's seats and being able to go into those calls and saying, I was you
Mhm.
5, 6 years ago. And
Yep.
that instantly helps to build those relationships. And of course, personality comes into it as well. But I would argue that sales is not for everyone, but it's for a lot more people than everyone thinks it's for.
I think
I
that's
think that,
perfect. I think that's totally right.
yeah, a lot of people that discount it that I talk to, I think actually would be really good at it, but they just have these weird misconceptions about it. And we talked a little bit about this when we chatted last week. But, the first thing that I always hear is, oh, but you only live on commission. And I'm like, if I only lived on commission, then I wouldn't live. Like I have a mortgage, right? Like I have to eat. I have to have a car. I had this misconception too at first that it was just commission only, but it's not. And if
It is
there
not.
are roles that are commission only, then I would heavily advise some deep, deep, deep research and thought if you're considering it. Do you hear that from people a lot too, asking
Yeah,
about
I do.
commission?
I do. Yeah, I do get that a lot. And that, I mean, you have to do your research, right? Like look through the job description and see what they say. If it is that and you really like the company, like we were saying before, still apply. If you get an interview, know the questions to ask. Ask about
Hmm.
structure. Ask what that looks like. Ask how the company formed over the last few years. Did the company overall hit their sales target? How many reps hit their quota number, right? Like those are all things that you need to be prepared to ask because we need to live. I'm with you on that, right? I have bills and, I have dogs that require a lot that,
Yeah.
you've got to, I'm with you. I don't know that I would recommend a commission only pay structure, but it is important to know what if there is commission, if there are bonuses, what the structure looks like. But I would say
Yeah.
the majority of the ones that I've seen or interviewed for, or like people that are in, they don't really work only on commission.
Yeah, I feel like that's rare. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't know that if you didn't look into it, right? And try to see what was going on and what's out there. So this brings me to what I want to talk about next is, you talked about the questions to ask when you're interviewing for an organization. So it's hard from the outside to understand the internal workings of an organization, especially when you're coming from a completely different field, like when you're changing careers in your 30s, like we both did. So what what do you think somebody should look for in a company when they're specifically coming from being a teacher or a principal?
Yeah. I think it's twofold, right? Like I think it's the
Hmm.
role. So I think you have to like
Hmm.
really understand the role and understand this too, like job descriptions that you see on LinkedIn on Indeed, wherever you see them, it's like for sure a generated, like, chat GPT generated thing. So like that's the other thing I see a lot is people see skills required,
Oh my gosh, yes.
right? It's like skills required. And somebody will look at that and be like, I don't have this one thing, so I'm not applying for this job. Apply for the job.
Yep.
Apply for the job. I promise you. You and I both got jobs with none of those required skills. And look
Oh,
at us now.
exactly. And I tell that to people all the time. I'm like, everyone else is applying. So why wouldn't you? And like, yeah, back to our initial jobs outside of the classroom. Like when I remember looking at the bullet points, and I think there were like 7 or 8 for my role. I think I had like 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of them being classroom experience preferred, right? Like I was like, oh, I have that.
Exactly. Check.
Right. Check.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Don't
like
get
exactly what
by
you said.
those. Don't get scared by
Yeah.
the job, like the skills required, because I'm telling you, like teachers have, again, back to that what we talked about before. Teachers have so many transferable skills and a work ethic that people know how hard teachers will work. You just have to market yourself in a way that shows that you have the skills, that you can be articulate about it, and that you're willing to work and put in the time to develop those skills quickly.
Well, you just said you have to market yourself, right? And I think that that's where there's a big disconnect. I think that we're former teachers, so we get it. People that are currently teachers get it. All other former educators get it, how hard teachers work, like you were saying. We can look at a resume, meaning you and me specifically, right? Can look at a resume and make those connections and understand what this person did and how it's going to help in a role that they're applying to. But what about a recruiter or a hiring manager or somebody who's never been in the classroom who's looking at this resume? It's not their job to connect those dots, and they're not going to. So all the more importance to properly market yourself, right? And figure out exactly how to translate that experience, which is what I work with people a lot on. How was that for you when you were working through that? Because I know for me, I was using my teacher resume and applying everywhere and not getting anything, and then wondering why I wasn't getting anything because I'd gotten an interview for every teaching job I've ever applied for. And then a resume writer told me, because your resume positions you as a teacher. So how about you and your translating?
100%. Yeah, no, that's so true. And there's also this other weird thing that happens in teachers where like we don't want to,
take credit.
Think it's like, yes, I don't know if it's like an industry thing or like that's just the way that, that we are. Like we don't want to like share our successes. We don't want to like say what we're good at. We don't want to market ourselves. Like there's something
so weird, right?
I know. But it was such a weird thing that I feel like people who are trying to do this transition don't like, they probably feel the same way. Like it's okay to share how good you are at something. Like it's okay. And you should like highlight all the things that make you a good employee, right? So that would be my first thing. And I would say for me, what I was similar with you with the resume, and like I had to just shift a lot of wording in my resume and in my cover letters where it's, right, instead of saying lead teacher or like I don't know, like where I developed curriculum for this classroom, turn that into lead curriculum developer. Right? Like
and it's not
you're not lying, you're not putting something on there that you didn't do.
You're translating.
Shifting the words a little bit to try to help someone who is a recruiter, who's in talent, who might not have been a teacher. Those are keywords that they look for to help them generate that sort of, oh, well, if they were a curriculum developer, they can definitely manage a load of, a book of business.
Exactly.
Right. And so those are the things that kind of click. So turn those into lead teacher. If you're the lead teacher of the classroom, be a lead teacher. Like, like if you were a teacher leader, if you, did observations, if you, spoke at a, led PD, put that on there. Like, especially at the beginning. Like those are all really important accomplishments that you should be proud of, but also it's okay to use those to market yourself.
Yeah. And I think as educators, we fall into this thing of like, but that's my title, right? My title is teacher. I just did all those things under teacher. And it's like, yeah, you did, but outside of your district, your building, or education in general, people aren't going to connect those dots, and it's up to you, right? It's at the end of the day, it is your job to market yourself in a way that makes sense for the role that you're targeting. So like you were saying, did you, I don't know, I'm giving an example here, right? Like, did you lead professional development at your staff meetings, even though your title was teacher? Yeah. So I guess you're also making sure that you need to post or post that you need to include on your resume that you were a professional development facilitator and this is what you did. And I think there's this weird thing where people want to say me and my team or my team did this. And I'm like, but who led it? Who came up with the idea? Who executed it? Who made the plan? And most of the time it's I did. I'm like, great. So you devised this plan, right? You facilitated this. And I think it's about taking credit where you should be taking credit rather than trying to share it, because is your grade level team trying to get a new job? No, you are. So you need to market yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to close out in just a few minutes, but I always like to end with a little lightning round. So are you ready? Okay. Boston, Newark, Austin, Chicago, or Charlotte, your favorite city?
Boston.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
I was young. I went to school there. It was like I was young when I lived there, but my they're just like all my best friends and their families live there now. I go back and I visit quite often, and every time I'm there, I'm like, this is just such a great place. Like even now that I'm older, it's like this is such a great place. The food is good, the history is good.
Yeah.
You got to be a little careful when you drive out there because they, but that's but no, I love Boston. I would have
Okay.
I would have moved back in a heartbeat. It just didn't, my life just didn't take me there.
Okay. Well, maybe
Yeah,
eventually.
maybe.
All right. So I think I know the answer to this because you're at a lake house, but lake or the beach?
Oh,
But you're a
it's
Jersey girl though.
I
So
know. I am. I grew up in New Jersey. I have always been and will always be a lake girl. I love the lake.
really?
Yeah, there's something about
Okay.
the sand in the ocean that doesn't do it for me. Listen, I will go to the beach. No problem, I'll have a great time. But we grew up coming actually to the lake that I live at now. Nice full moment. We've been coming to this lake since we were kids, my sister and I.
Okay.
And so now we're like, we're older and we can actually like live here in the summer, but love the lake.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm more of a
I know.
beach if I had to compare
Okay.
the two, but okay, it's
Yeah.
our one of our few differences, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so who really runs your household? You have two dogs. Is one of
hmm
them actually the boss? Because we know it's not you.
No, gosh, of course it's not. Yeah, I have two dogs. I have a 13-year-old, small. She's like 7 pounds, little terrier poodle mix named Bella, and then I have a 7-year-old golden retriever. She's about 65 pounds. Believe it or not, my little one, who is 7 pounds, runs our house. She
Okay, so Bella's
is
the boss.
Bella's the boss. She is the queen. Everything revolves around her. My big dog is Zoe, and she won't jump on the bed if Bella's on the bed because she respects her space, things like that. So yeah, Bella runs our house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one final question for you. What is the best piece of advice that you've either gotten when you were going through your career pivot journey or that you've since realized that you now bestow upon the people in your
Mm,
LinkedIn DMs?
I would say the best advice I would give would be goodness. I'm trying to make it succinct so it's not too long.
That's okay.
My
I can
advice,
cut. Yeah.
yeah, please, geez. My advice would be to just go for it. And I think you really need to know yourself. And so I think like
Mm,
a little bit of internal work to really understand, like, are you ready for this? Are you ready to put in work for this? Are you really like, it is a lot of work at first. So like really understanding yourself and make the change when you're ready, but don't do it for external factors. Don't do it because you hate your
mm,
manager. Don't do it because you hate the class of kids that you haven't, well, hopefully you don't hate the class of kids, but you had a tough year with the kids in front of you, right? Like know yourself really well that this is a choice you want to make for you and your family or, just sort of wherever you are. Just know yourself well. So do a little internal work when you're ready to make the jump. And then once you know you're ready, like go all in because I promise you it's worth
you broke up. Once
it.
you're
Oh,
ready, go all in. So start with that. Once you're ready, go
okay.
all in.
Yeah. Once you're ready to make that change, and you're ready to go all in, go for it. And know that like there is a life on the other side of it where you can still be really happy and really successful and still making an impact in education. If it's a good fun on the other side too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicolina. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for Erin Lewber's Career Lunch Break.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.